Hello, my friends. This is Leslie, and the topic today is lengthen to strengthen. What do we mean by that? If you think of most activities in life, from skiing to snowshoeing, we're talking winter sports right now, ice skating, um, cross-country skiing, etc. If you were to squeeze your glutes, and then I hear this all the time, squeeze your booty, which makes me crazy. But if you were to tighten your glutes, and try to get into a stance to ski, you physically couldn't do it. And if you're cross country, or especially if you're going uphill cross country and or snowshoeing, you need your glutes. So what do we mean by lengthen to strengthen? At the end of the day, we have this thing called a load to explode, right? And the tissue needs to be elastic. And the more we shorten it, the more we create dysfunction, the more we start to lose flexibility, which compromises our mobility, if that makes sense. So again, I mean, if we're looking at, if we really want to get those hamstrings to be efficient, then we have to look at ways of how do we do that? How do we translate, training our body that is completely associated with that of function. And again, I have to give credit where credit is due, as Gary Gray. And when we look at the body and how that it moves, very rarely do we have to think about, squeezing and tucking and tightening our body down. Because if you look at a little kid running around, that's the last thing that we are doing. So sometimes the stuff that we are telling people to do as trainers couldn't be more incorrect and leading to dysfunction. Same thing, like if you're bridging and you tell your clients, oh, squeeze your glutes, feel the burn. Why do we feel like we need to feel the burn in a movement? Does that really and truly lead to function? Now, don't get me wrong, if we're working with, high-end athletes, for example, okay, well, maybe there's exercises that, a high-end athlete needs to do for his particular sport. But if we're talking the average person that really needs to feel and engage, then, that's a different subject. So let's talk about those hamstrings. So again, if you were to just simply place your hands on your hips and send your hips back and come back up, and then you can counterbalance with those arms being in front. And when you send your hips back, just pause for a moment and notice what you feel. Same thing, if you were to bend over and touch your toes, you feel the tissue lengthen authentically. Now let's go back to now go ahead and squeeze your booty and then try to bend over and touch your toes. You physically cannot do it. So again, what we're telling people doesn't lead to function. So let's go into a lunge. So if my goal was to really get into my posterior calf, being my left one being behind me, then I'm going to reach my arms in opposition and reach in front and come back and bend that front knee. Now, if I turn the back foot out, I'm not going to feel as much of that posterior chain lengthen. So as I reach and come back, I'm going to start to feel that calf lengthen authentically. Same as if now, in the old days, we would lift and lower, but at the end of the day, we want to create greater dorsiflexion in the ankle. In plantar flexion, I'm not stretching it, I'm actually shortening the tissue. The minute I drive the heel down, I feel lengthening. Same thing, if I'm reaching down to pick something up, all right, I'm starting to authentically turn on that hamstring and glute, and I start to feel it. So once again, if I really want to create better function posterior, then I got to move in the opposite direction, which is anterior. So again, if I'm telling my clients to tighten their glutes, then I'm putting them in a posterior position, so the posterior chain can't even lengthen, if that makes sense. So think of it this way. If I'm working in opposition, like if I was going to shoot a rubber band, I'm going to have to pull it back before I let it go. So creating that elasticity is creating better flexibility and function in our body. So once again, think about what you're doing. And, if you want to train the back, you got to move to the front. Vice versa, if I want to train the front, then I'm moving to the back. So these are all just, a few little tips and tricks that we can do as practitioners of movement. This is Leslie, and stay tuned. Lots more coming your way.